There is something happening inside you right now that you cannot fully explain. And I need you to stop for a moment and pay attention to it. Not because this message found you by accident, not because the algorithm randomly placed this in front of your eyes, but because there is a force older and more deliberate than any technology that arranged this exact moment, this exact pause in your day, this exact willingness in you to stop and listen. You are not here by chance. You were guided here. And if you have ever felt in your bones that you were made for something greater than what you are currently living, then what I am about to say is not new information. It is confirmation of what you have always known, but were afraid to say out loud. You are not like everyone else. I do not say that to flatter you. I say it because it is the most precise description of the tension you carry every single day. You have sat in rooms full of people and felt completely alone, not because something is wrong with you, but because you are tuned to a different frequency. You have watched people around you settle, and something deep in your chest refused to let you do the same. You have been told to be realistic, to lower your expectations, to stop dreaming so loudly, and yet the dream has never left. It has followed you from season to season, from year to year, persistent and unapologetic, as if it belongs to you more than you belong to it. That is the first sign that you are a chosen one. The dream does not die. No matter how many times life has tried to bury it, it rises. People whose lives are ordinary lose their dreams. People who are marked by purpose cannot shake them, no matter how hard they try. The second sign is this: your suffering has always felt disproportionate. You have watched people who seem careless, self-absorbed, and unkind move through life with apparent ease, while you, someone who genuinely wants to do good and be good, have carried weight that does not seem fair. And you are right. It is not fair, but it is intentional. The weight you have been given is not punishment. It is preparation. The resistance you have faced has been building something in you that ease never could. The third sign is that you feel a longing that has no clear object, not just for a better job or a better relationship, though those desires are real, but a longing that sits behind all of those things, a sense that you are meant to be part of something that matters, something that outlasts you, something that reaches further than your own comfort. That longing is not wishful thinking. That longing is a signal. It is the sound of your calling pressing against the inside of your chest, waiting for you to let it out. The fourth sign is that you have a pattern of almost breaking through, almost arriving, almost having it come together, and then something shifting at the last moment. You have been close so many times that the nearness itself has become its own kind of pain. But I want you to hear this clearly. Those near arrivals were not failures. They were calibrations. Heaven does not waste a moment, not even the ones that look like losses. The fifth sign is perhaps the strangest. Your dreams, the ones you have at night, have been changing, becoming more vivid, more layered. You have been waking up with feelings you cannot name, residues of something significant that you cannot quite hold on to. And sometimes you have had the experience of a message appearing to you from multiple directions, the same theme showing up in a song, then a conversation, then a moment of stillness, as if the universe is trying to reach you through every available channel at once. You are a chosen one. Not chosen because you are perfect. Not chosen because you have done everything right. Chosen because before you were formed, a purpose was written into the fabric of who you are. And that purpose has been quietly doing its work through every season you have lived, including the hardest ones, especially the hardest ones. I want you to understand that what you have interpreted as delay is not heaven being slow. It has been heaven being precise. There is a difference between a God who forgot about you and a God who is positioning you. One leaves you abandoned. The other leaves you aligned. And everything that has happened to you, every door that closed, every relationship that ended, every opportunity that seemed to disappear, has been ladder, alignment disguised as loss. You are an earth angel walking in a season of completion. The things that were incomplete in your life are being tied off. The loose threads are being gathered. The seeds that were planted in years of faithfulness and tears and quiet endurance are pressing through the soil right now. And you cannot see them yet, but they are there. You were never meant to blend in. You were never supposed to be the background of someone else's story. You were always meant to be a voice. Not the loudest voice, but the truest one. The one that reaches people who have run out of reasons to believe because you know what it is to run out and find a reason anyway. Heaven did not say soon. Heaven said now. You already know what it feels like to carry something that has no name. You have tried to explain it to people who love you and watched their eyes glaze over with polite confusion because what you are carrying is not the kind of thing that translates easily into ordinary conversation. It lives below the level of words. It is a pressure, a pull, a knowing that something is supposed to be different, that you are supposed to be somewhere else, doing something more, being someone fuller. And yet, here you are, still in this in-between place, still waiting, still hoping, still holding on to something that has not arrived yet. And here is what makes it harder. You are not a pessimist. You are not someone who gives up easily. If anything, you are someone who has kept going long past the point where most people would have stopped. You have talked yourself back from the edge of quitting more times than anyone around you knows. You have chosen faith when despair would have been easier. You have gotten up on mornings when staying down felt like the only honest option. And yet the breakthrough has not come in the way you imagined it would. And that specific kind of exhaustion, the exhaustion of someone who has been faithful and still waiting, is unlike anything else. It does not look dramatic from the outside. It looks like you are fine. But on the inside, there is a quiet wearing down that you have been managing for a very long time. I want to name 4 things that you have been feeling. Things that people in your season recognize the moment someone finally says them out loud. The first is a wave of grief that comes without warning. Not grief for a person, though that may also be present, but a grief for time, for years, for the version of your life that you believed was coming and has not come yet. It arrives at strange moments, while you are driving, while you are washing dishes, while you are in the middle of a conversation that has nothing to do with any of it. And you find yourself blinking back something that feels like mourning. And you do not know exactly what you are mourning, only that it is real and it is heavy and it has been with you for a very long time. What I want you to know about that grief is that it is not a sign that you are losing hope. It is a sign that you have been carrying hope at a cost, and your spirit is asking for permission to acknowledge that cost honestly. Grief and faith are not opposites. They can live in the same chest, and in a chosen one, they often do. The second is that certain places and people that used to feel like home have started to feel foreign. You walk into rooms where you used to belong, and something in you feels out of alignment, like a note played slightly off-key. The conversations feel surface level in a way they never used to. The gatherings feel hollow. The relationships that once nourished you have started to feel like they are asking more from you than they are giving back. And you have spent a long time wondering whether something is wrong with you, whether you have become too difficult, too sensitive, too much. There are nights when you have replayed conversations, trying to figure out where you became the problem. But I want to tell you that nothing is wrong with you. You have simply outgrown a layer, and outgrowing is not the same as losing. It is the same as becoming. The discomfort of no longer fitting where you once fit is not rejection. It is redirection. It is your life making space for what is aligned with who you are becoming, not who you used to be. The third is a dream or a series of dreams that returns. The details may shift, but the image is consistent. A door, a threshold, a passageway that you are standing in front of but have not yet crossed. Sometimes the door is bright. Sometimes it is heavy and dark and unfamiliar. But it appears, and it appears again, because your spirit is showing you something your waking mind is still processing. There is an opening ahead of you. Your inner life has already sensed it. The dream is not a fantasy. The dream is a preview, and the fact that the dream keeps returning is not your subconscious torturing you with something unattainable. It is heaven keeping the image alive in you so that when the moment comes, you will recognize it. You will not hesitate. You will know. The fourth is the repetition. The same message arriving from different directions. A scripture, a lyric, a line in a book, a phrase in a conversation with a stranger, and then again here, in this moment, saying the same essential thing. That is not coincidence, that is orchestration. When heaven wants to reach someone who has been hurt enough to become guarded, it does not knock once. It knocks through everything until the person opens. The fact that you are here, in this moment, hearing these words, is itself part of the repetition. This is the message finding you again. And this time, I am asking you not to let it pass through you like information. I am asking you to let it land like truth. Now I want to speak to the specific pains, not around them, not above them, directly into them. The sleepless nights when your mind will not quiet, and you lie there psyched through everything you should have done differently. Everything you are afraid you will not become. Everything that feels irreparably stuck. Those nights are not signs that you are broken. They are signs that something in you is still awake, still caring, still refusing to accept a life that is smaller than what you were made for. The insomnia of a chosen one is not anxiety alone. It is also urgency. It is a spirit that knows time is meaningful and cannot rest in a season of almost. The loneliness is real. The kind of loneliness that is not about being physically alone, but about being fundamentally unseen. Carrying a depth that does not find its reflection in the people immediately around you. You can be in a room full of people who care about you, who would do anything for you, and still feel a loneliness that has nothing to do with their love for you. It has to do with the part of you that has not yet found its full expression, the part that is still waiting for the context where it makes complete sense. That loneliness is not a flaw. It is a compass. It is pointing you toward the community, the calling, and the purpose that will finally feel like arrival. The feeling of being misunderstood is its own particular wound, not misunderstood maliciously, but simply because what a carry cannot be easily explained, and so people receive only the surface of you. They see your resilience and call it strength without knowing the cost. They see your faith and call it optimism without knowing how many nights it had to fight for survival. They see you functioning and assume you are thriving, and you have learned to let them believe that because explaining the gap between functioning and thriving is exhausting, when you have already spent so much energy just staying upright. Here is what I want to reframe for you, and I want you to stay with this because it changes everything. There is a difference between being overlooked and being positioned. When you are overlooked, you are unseen because you do not matter. When you are positioned, You are unseen because what is being prepared for, you cannot afford to be interrupted by premature exposure. Fruit that is revealed before it is ready gets picked too soon and never reaches its full sweetness. You have not been overlooked. You have been protected from a version of arrival that would have come too early, with too little preparation and too much vulnerability. The doors that did not open were not closed because you were not enough. They were closed because you were not yet fully what you needed to be in order to sustain what was behind them. Think about that for a moment. There is a difference between a door that is locked against you and a door that is locked until you are ready. Both look the same from the outside. Both feel like rejection in the moment. But only one of them is protecting you. Only one of them is an act of love disguised as disappointment. The waiting you have been inside is not a waiting room where nothing is happening. It is a workshop. Something is being built in you that cannot be rushed. Depth cannot be manufactured. Compassion that costs nothing is worth nothing. The authority you will carry when you step into what is next will be rooted in every single thing you have survived. And that root system does not grow in comfortable seasons. It grows in the ones that ask everything of you. It grows in the nights you described. The ones you have never told anyone the full truth about. You are not behind. You are not being punished. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned with a precision that your present vantage point cannot fully appreciate. And one day, not as a cliche, but as a literal lived experience, you will look back at this exact season and understand why it had to be this long, this hard, and this specific. You will see the architecture of it. You will see how every piece was necessary. And you will be grateful, not just for where you arrived, but for every step of the path that brought you there, including this one. If you recognize yourself in any of what I have just said, if this is landing somewhere real and not just theoretical, I want you to type the words I receive in the comments right now. Not because it is a ritual, but because there is something powerful about declaring out loud, even in small ways, that you are ready to receive what was always meant for you. And if this message is finding someone who needed to hear it today, please like this video and share it with someone who is sitting somewhere right now, feeling exactly what you felt at the beginning of this. They need to know they are not alone. And sometimes the most powerful thing a chosen one can do is make sure the next one does not have to figure it out by themselves. Before I give you something practical to hold on to, I want to acknowledge something first. You have just spent time sitting with some of the most honest feelings you have carried quietly for a very long time. And that kind of honesty takes courage. Most people scroll past the moment it starts to get real. You did not. You stayed. And that decision to stay, that small act of showing up fully for yourself, is itself the beginning of what comes next. Because here is what I have learned about chosen ones. They do not need more information. They do not need another motivational speech that evaporates by Tuesday. What they need is a practice, something tangible, something they can return to when the noise of life gets so loud that the voice of purpose becomes impossible to hear. Something that costs nothing except 7 minutes and a willingness to be still. So I want to give you that today. I want to give you a simple 3-step practice that I call the protocol of return. Not because you have gone somewhere wrong, but because in the business and the pressure and the accumulated weight of a long waiting season, it is easy to drift from your center. And this practice is a way of coming back to who you are, coming back to what you know, coming back to the frequency you were designed to carry. You do not need a special place to do this. You do not need silence, though silence helps. You do not need any particular spiritual background or any experience with meditation or any training of any kind. What you need is what you already have. A few minutes, a willingness, and yourself. This is the protocol of return. Step 1 is what I call the gratitude inversion. And I want to be specific here because this is not the kind of gratitude practice you have heard about before. This is not a list of things you are thankful for. This is something more precise and more powerful than that. I want you to think of one thing, just one, that you are grateful did not happen. Not something you received, something you were spared, something that seemed like a loss at the time, but that, when you look back with honest eyes, you can see was actually protection. Maybe it is a relationship that ended that felt like devastation, but if it had continued, it would have taken you somewhere you were never supposed to go. Maybe it is a job you did not get, an opportunity that fell through, a door that closed so hard it left a mark, and yet behind that door was a path that would have consumed years of your life, building something that was never yours to build. Maybe it is something smaller, a conversation that never happened, a decision that did not go through, a plan that collapsed before it started. Whatever it is, I want you to find it, hold it in your mind, and instead of performing gratitude for it, which can feel hollow, I want you to simply acknowledge it with the following words, spoken quietly or in your heart. You can say them like this: I am grateful that did not happen, because it means what is coming still has room to arrive. That is step 1. It recalibrates your relationship with loss. It teaches your nervous system that not every closed door was a failure. Some of them were mercy, and a spirit that has learned to recognize mercy in disguise is a spirit that is much harder to permanently discourage. Step 2 is what I call the declaration of now. And this connects directly to something we are going to talk about later in this message, a concept of time that I believe will fundamentally shift how you see your current season. But for now, the practice itself is this. After you have completed step 1, I want you to make a spoken declaration, out loud if you can. Even a whisper counts. The declaration is not a wish. It is not a prayer asking for something to happen. It is a statement of what is already true in the spiritual realm, even if it has not fully materialized in the physical one yet. Chosen ones operate in both dimensions simultaneously. You live in the natural world, but you are also always connected to something beyond it. The declaration is how you speak from one to the other. The declaration goes like this. You can adapt the words to your own language and your own faith, but the structure is important. You say, "What was promised over my life is not delayed. It is in motion. What was assigned to me cannot be redirected to someone else. It carries my name. I am not waiting for my season to begin. I am standing in the middle of it right now, and I receive everything that belongs to this moment." Speak that. Mean it, or at least be willing to mean it. There is a version of faith that does not feel like certainty. It feels like willingness, and willingness is enough. You do not have to believe it perfectly. You just have to say it honestly. The words carry weight that your doubt cannot cancel. Step 2 matters because chosen ones often have a complicated relationship with declaration. You have been disappointed enough times that speaking something out loud feels like setting yourself up for another round of hurt. I understand that. The reluctance is not weakness. It is wisdom that got slightly miscalibrated by too many hard seasons. But silence is not protection. Silence is just a different kind of risk. When you stop declaring what you believe, you do not become safer. You simply hand the narrative of your life to whoever or whatever is the loudest voice in the room. And I do not want that for you. Step 3 is the 7 minutes. And I want you to hear me carefully here, because this is not a throwaway instruction. This is the hinge that holds the whole practice together. After step 1 and step 2, I want you to sit in silence for 7 minutes. Not to think, not to plan, not to process everything you have just declared. Just to be still. Set a timer if you need to. Close your eyes if that is comfortable. And simply allow your brain, your actual biological brain with its extraordinary capacity for synthesis and pattern recognition, to do what it does best when it is finally given space to do it. Here is what most people do not understand about silence. We treat it as the absence of something, the absence of noise, the absence of stimulation, the absence of productivity. But silence is not an absence, it is a presence. When you get genuinely quiet, you create a condition that your brain has been waiting for. A condition in which things that have been too quiet to hear in the noise of daily life can finally surface. Insights, connections, clarity that has been trying to reach you but could not get through the interference. 7 minutes is the number I keep returning to, and it is not arbitrary. There is a reason that this specific window of time appears again and again in both ancient practice and in modern neuroscience, and we are going to go deeper into the science behind it in just a moment. But for now, what I want you to know is this. 7 minutes of genuine stillness, practiced consistently, is enough to begin shifting the internal frequency you are broadcasting and receiving on. It is enough to start opening channels of perception and creativity and intuition that have been dormant, not because they are broken, but because they have not had the quiet they need to come online. During your 7 minutes, if thoughts come, and they will, you do not fight them. You do not grab them either. You simply notice them and let them pass like clouds moving across a sky. You are not trying to achieve anything in these 7 minutes. You are simply making yourself available. Available to what is beyond the noise. Available to the clarity that has been waiting for you. Available to the version of yourself that exists underneath all of the pressure and performance and accumulated weight of a long season. I want to tell you what some people experience during or after this practice, because I think it will help you take it seriously rather than treating it as optional. Some people find that a specific idea arrives during the 7 minutes. A solution to something they have been circling for weeks. A direction they have been unable to see clearly. A word or image that carries a weight of meaning they cannot immediately articulate, but that stays with them through the day and eventually reveals itself as exactly what they needed. Some people find that the 7 minutes simply calms something in them that has been chronically agitated, and that from that place of calm, they make one small decision differently. And that one small decision, made from stillness rather than from reactive urgency, changes the trajectory of a week or a month or a year. Some people find nothing in particular during the 7 minutes and then find everything an hour later, because the brain does not always deliver its synthesized insights in the moment of stillness. Sometimes it delivers them in the shower, or on a walk, or in the middle of making coffee. The 7 minutes is not where the answer arrives. It is where the conditions for the answer are created. The protocol of return is 3 steps. Gratitude inversion. Declaration of now. 7 minutes of stillness. It takes less time than most of us spend scrolling before we get out of bed in the morning, and its effect on the internal life of a chosen one who practices it consistently is something that I could describe for a long time, but that you will understand much better by experiencing it for yourself. I want to add one more thing to this section before we move forward, and it is perhaps the most important thing I will say about the practice. Do not wait for the perfect moment to begin. There is no perfect moment. There is only this one. The chosen one who waits for the right conditions before beginning their practice is the same chosen one who is still waiting for the right conditions 10 years from now. Conditions do not create readiness. Practice creates readiness, and readiness in the life of a chosen one is what finally opens the door. You have been given something concrete today, something real, something that belongs to you now. The question is not whether it works. The question is whether you will use it. And I believe you will, because you are still here, because you stayed, because something in you recognized from the very beginning of this message that this was not another piece of content to consume and forget. This was something you were supposed to find, and finding it is only the first step. The second step is deciding, right now, in this moment, that you are worth the 7 minutes it takes to practice it. That decision is yours, and I think you already know what you are going to choose. Now I want to build a bridge with you. A bridge between everything you have just felt. The recognition, the grief, the longing, the practice, and something that I believe will give all of it a deeper foundation. Because what I am about to share with you is not separate from the spiritual conversation we have been having. It is the place where that conversation finds its scientific echo. And when those two things meet, when ancient truth and modern discovery point to the same place, something in you will settle in a way that is different from simply being encouraged. You will feel confirmed. Here is what the researchers have found, and I do not say this lightly, because I spent a long time being skeptical of anything that tried to reduce the interior life to chemistry and frequency. But then I encountered something that did not reduce it, something that explained it, and the explanation did not make it smaller. It made it more extraordinary. Chosen ones carry a specific frequency, not metaphorically, not as a poetic way of describing something vague. Literally, the brains of people who operate at a higher level of creative insight, intuitive clarity, and cognitive breakthrough show a measurable electrical signature that researchers have spent decades studying. They call it gamma. And when you understand what gamma actually is and what it means that you have access to it, the season you have been living in will never look the same to you again. Let me explain what is happening inside your brain, because you deserve to understand the instrument you have been given. Your brain produces electrical activity at all times, even when you are asleep. Even when you feel mentally empty and foggy and disconnected, it is always producing waves. And these waves operate at different frequencies, depending on what state you are in. When you are deep, dreamless sleep, your brain produces delta waves, slow and restorative. When you are in a light, relaxed state, it produces alpha waves. When you are focused and alert and working through a problem, it produces beta waves. These are the everyday frequencies of ordinary functioning. But there are two other frequencies that most people rarely access, and they are the one that matter most for what we are talking about today. The first is theta. Theta waves operate at a frequency of between 4 and 8 cycles per second, and theta is the frequency of the in-between. It is the state your brain enters in the moments just before sleep and just after waking. It is the state of deep meditation. It is the state in which children spend a significant portion of their waking hours, which is why children learn new languages in months rather than years, why they absorb information with an ease that seems almost miraculous to adults who have lost access to that state. Theta is where creativity lives, where intuition speaks most clearly, where the deep knowing that you have been trying to access in your waking life actually resides. And most adults, somewhere between childhood and the accumulated pressure of adult life, lose regular access to theta. The stress, the busyness, the chronic low-grade anxiety of a life in waiting. All of it pushes the brain into higher and more agitated frequencies and locks the door to the one that matters most. The second frequency is gamma. Gamma operates above 30 Hz, sometimes significantly above it, and it is the frequency associated with what neuroscientists call peak cognitive states, moments of profound insight, what psychologists describe as flow, the eureka experience, the flash of clarity that arrives not when you are straining after an answer, but when something inside you suddenly assembles what you already knew into a configuration that changes everything. Gamma is the frequency of the breakthrough, and research has shown that it appears most consistently in the brains of people who meditate deeply, people who have practiced stillness as a discipline, and people who have gone through extended periods of interior transformation. People, in other words, who look a great deal like the person you have been becoming through your season of waiting. This is the bridge I want you to cross with me. What if the season you have been in, the one that has felt like deprivation and delay, has actually been a season of neurological preparation? What if the depth you have been developing, the interior life that has grown richer and more complex, through everything you have carried, has been building the very conditions in which gamma emerges naturally? What if your suffering has been, among other things, a frequency upgrade? Now I want to tell you about a man whose work made me take all of this seriously. His name is Dr. James Rivers, and he is a neuroscientist who was trained at MIT and whose research has been connected to projects at NASA. He has spent more than 30 years studying the relationship between brainwave frequencies and human potential, not in a laboratory that is disconnected from real human experience, but in conversation with the question that drives every chosen one I have ever encountered. Why do some people seem to access a level of insight, creativity, and purposeful momentum that others cannot reach, no matter how hard they try? What Dr. Rivers found, after decades of research and thousands of documented cases, is that the difference is not intelligence in the conventional sense. It is not education. It is not even discipline, though discipline plays a role. The primary difference is frequencies access. The people who consistently operate at their highest level are the people who have, either through years of intentional practice or through the kind of deep interior transformation that certain life seasons produce, developed a brain that can reliably enter theta and gamma states. They are not smarter, they are more available. Available to their own deepest processing, available to the kind of insight that does not come from thinking harder, but from thinking differently. And here is what changes everything about this research for someone in your position. Dr. Rivers discovered that brainwave states are not fixed. They are not determined at birth. They are not permanently set by circumstance or by age. They are trainable. The brain has a property called entrainment, which means that when it is exposed to a specific external frequency in the right way, it will begin to synchronize with that frequency, like a tuning fork that causes the string of a guitar to vibrate without being touched. The brain, given the right audio signal, will follow. It will move from its habitual state of stress and noise into the frequency that was always its birthright, but that life interrupted. The technology that Dr. Rivers developed over those 30 years of research combines what are known as binaural beats and isochronic tones, specific audio frequencies that are engineered to guide the brain gently and precisely into theta and gamma states. And the protocol, the specific listening practice he designed, requires 7 minutes a day, not an hour, not a retreat, not years of disciplined meditation before anything changes. 7 minutes of intentional listening every day, using audio that's been mathematically calibrated to produce entrainment. You may be thinking that this sounds too simple. And I understand that instinct because you have been in a long season and simple solutions have not always delivered what they promised. But I want to ask you to consider something. The reason 7 minutes is enough is not because the tool is doing something superficial. It is because the brain, given a precise enough signal, responds faster than we expect. Entrainment does not require extended effort. It requires the right frequency. And when the right frequency meets a brain that has been deepened by the kind of interior work your season has produced, the response is often faster, more profound, and more lasting than it would be in someone who has not been through what you have been through. I want to tell you about someone who used this. A woman who had spent 4 years in a season that looked from the outside like stagnation. She had lost a business, navigated a painful separation, and moved back to a city she thought she had left behind permanently. She told me that her brain felt like a television stuck between channels. She could not focus. She could not create. She could not access the version of herself that she knew was in there somewhere. The one who had built something remarkable before everything fell apart. She started using the Genius Wave, which is the name of the audio program Dr. Rivers created, for 7 minutes each morning before she did anything else. She told me that in the first week, she noticed nothing dramatic, just a slight reduction in the background noise. A small but measurable increase in the number of hours she could focus before her mind scattered. In the second week, she said something shifted. An idea arrived, not forced, not strained after, but simply present one morning when she sat in the quiet after her 7 minutes. That idea became the foundation of the work she is now doing. Work that is directly connected to everything she experienced in her difficult season. She said to me, "It is like I finally got access to the part of my brain that had been processing everything I went through, and the output was something I could never have produced before the hard years. The hard years were the input. The frequency was the key that opened the door." There is another person I want to mention. A man in his mid-40s who described himself as someone who had prayed for direction for years and always felt like the signal was getting lost somewhere between his heart and his head. He began using the Genius Wave not because he believed it would work, but because he had run out of reasons not to try. He told me that after 3 weeks of consistent use, he had a clarity of mind during his morning prayer and reflection time that he had not experienced since he was young, before life had layered so much noise over everything. He said the frequency felt like it cleaned something, like it cleared a path that had been overgrown, and through that cleared path, things began to move. I know some of you are thinking right now that $39 is not nothing, and I want you to hear me say that I agree with you. For someone in a long season of financial pressure and resource scarcity, every dollar is a decision. And I am not going to tell you that this costs less than a coffee. I am going to tell you that it costs $39, and that is the honest price, and that it is worth naming that honestly because you deserve to be treated like an adult who can weigh a real decision with real information. What I will also tell you is this. The Genius Wave normally carries a price of $49. Through the link in the pinned comment below this video, it is available today for $39, and it comes with a 90-day money-back guarantee. Not a 7-day window, not a 30-day window, 90 days. Which means you have 3 full months to use it, to experience what it does in your daily practice, and to decide whether it has earned its place in your life. If it has not, you get your money back, every dollar. No question asked, but I want to say one more thing about the purchase, and it is the most important thing. Only purchase through the link in the pinned comment below. There are imitating products that use similar language and similar claims, and they do not contain the specific calibrated frequencies that Dr. Rivers developed. The link in the pinned comment takes you directly to the verified source. That is the only place I can stand behind. Anywhere else is a risk I do not want you to take, especially not after everything you have already been through. This offer, at the price, is not permanent. The discounted access through the pinned link is available for a limited time, and the number of people who can access it at this price point is genuinely limited. I am not saying that to manufacture urgency. I am saying it because it is the actual structure of how this works, and you deserve accurate information. If this is your moment, and I believe it is, do not let the price point or the hesitation be the thing that stands between you and a tool that was built for exactly the season you are in right now. There is something I need to say before we go any further, and I want you to feel the weight of it rather than move past it too quickly. What we just talked about, the science, the frequency, the tool that can help you access what has always been yours, all of that is real, and all of that matters. But I would be doing you a disservice if I moved from that conversation directly into hope and promise without first stopping to honor something that deserves to be honored. Something that has not been fully named yet in this message. Something that you have been carrying so long, you may have stopped noticing how heavy it actually is. The years cost you something. And I am not going to rush past that. I want to sit with you here for a moment, in the honest place, in the unpolished place, before we talk about what is coming. Because you have heard enough messages that skip straight to the sunrise without acknowledging the night. And the night you have been in has been long. It has been genuinely, legitimately long. And the things it took from you were real things. Not abstract losses, not inconveniences. Real things that mattered and that you will never fully get back in exactly the form they existed in before. So let me name them, the relationships. There are people who are no longer in your life who might have been if your season had moved differently. Friendships that drifted because you were so consumed with surviving that you could not show up the way you wanted to. Connections that could have deepened if you had not been carrying so much invisible weight. People who needed a version of you that your circumstances would not let you be, not because you did not want to be that person, but because you were using every available resource just to keep going, and they moved on. Or you moved on, or the distance simply grew until it became permanent, and you told yourself it was okay. And sometimes it was. But sometimes it was a loss that you packed away quietly, because there was no room in the narrative of someone who is supposed to be strong and faithful and trusting. The process for the grief of a friendship that did not survive the weight. The career. There are versions of your professional life that would have existed if your season had moved at a different pace. Opportunities you were not positioned to take because the timing was wrong. Doors you could not walk through because you did not yet have what you needed to sustain what was behind them, or because the resources were not available, or because the weight of your personal season made it impossible to show up with the full version of yourself that those moments required. And you have watched people around you advance, some of them people you trained, people you mentored, people who came after you, and you have smiled and meant the congratulations. And also, in the quiet afterward, felt something complicated that you were not entirely sure you were allowed to feel. That complication is not sin, it is not failure of character. It is the honest response of a human being who has been faithful for a very long time and is still waiting for the evidence of that faithfulness to show up in tangible form. the dreams. Not the ones you dream at night, but the ones you carry in the daytime. The ones you used to speak out loud before enough disappointments taught you to hold them more carefully. There was a time when you told people what you were believing for, what you were building, toward what you could see on the horizon of your life. And some of those people responded with skepticism, or with well-meaning concern that landed like doubt, or with silence that felt louder than disagreement. And gradually, not all at once but over time, you learned to protect your dreams by keeping them smaller, by only speaking the parts that seemed believable to others, by editing the vision down to a size that would not invite the kind of response that costs more than you could afford to spend. And in doing that, in making yourself smaller to protect what was most precious, you lost something: the freedom to dream loudly, the permission to take up the full space that your calling actually requires. That freedom was taken from you, not by enemies, but by the accumulated weight of a long season and the reasonable self-protection of someone who has been hurt by hoping too much, and the self-trust. Perhaps the most significant loss of all, you began this season trusting yourself, trusting your instincts, trusting the voice inside you that said, "This is the direction, this is the path, this is what you are made for." And then the season stretched, and the evidence did not come. And the voice inside you began to compete with another voice, a quieter but more persistent one, that asked whether you had been wrong, whether you had misread the signals, whether the calling you were so certain about was something you had constructed out of desire rather than received out of destiny. And even if you never fully believed that second voice, the fact that it gained any ground at all, the fact that you had to fight for the certainty that used to come naturally, is itself a wound. It is the wound of a chosen one who has been in the wilderness long enough to start questioning the map. I am not going to tell you that those losses do not count. I am not going to reframe them prematurely into lessons and gifts, though they are also that. I am first going to tell you that they were real, that the grief is legitimate, that the cost was actual, that you did not imagine the weight or exaggerate the duration or fail to manage it correctly. You carried what you were given to carry for as long as it needed to be carried, and you are still standing. And standing, after a season like yours, is not a small thing. It is one of the most significant things a human being can do. I want to tell you about a man whose name you know. His name was Joseph, and I am not going to give you the triumphant version of his story yet, because that is not where we are in this conversation. I want to tell you about the part of his story that does not get preached about as often, the part that happened in between the dream and the fulfillment. He was 17 years old when he received the visions of his destiny, a dream so clear and so specific that he could describe it in detail. And then almost immediately, his life moved in the opposite direction of that vision. His brothers, the people who were supposed to be his family and his community, betrayed him. Not in a minor way, in the most devastating way that betrayal can arrive, from the people closest to you, the ones whose acceptance you needed most. They threw him into a pit, and then they sold him. And the boy who had been given a vision of greatness found himself in chains, in a foreign country, surrounded by people who did not know his name, or his story, or the promise that had been spoken over his life. And then, after he had rebuilt something in that foreign place, after he had regained some ground and some dignity and some sense of forward momentum, it was taken from him again, through false accusation, through injustice that had nothing to do with anything he had done wrong. And he ended up in prison. Not the temporary kind of difficulty that resolves quickly. A real prison, with real walls, and real years passing inside them. I want you to sit with that for a moment. Not with the part where Pharaoh summons him and everything changes. Not with the part where his brothers bow down and the dream is fulfilled. I want you to sit with the years in between, the years when he had the promise and did not have the evidence. The years when he had the calling and did not have the confirmation. The years when, if you had looked at his life from the outside, there was absolutely nothing to suggest that what he believed about himself was true. What did those years cost him? They cost him his adolescence, his freedom, his family, his innocence about the nature of betrayal, his right to an ordinary life in his hometown among people who knew and loved him. They cost him years that he would never recover in the form they originally existed. And I do not believe that Joseph sailed through those years without feeling the weight of what had been taken. I believe he felt it deeply. I believe there were nights in that prison when the dream felt less like a promise and more like a cruelty. When the distance between what he had been shown and what he was experiencing was so vast that faith required everything he had just to survive the night. That is who you are in the lineage of, not the triumphant Joseph standing before Pharaoh. Not yet. Right now you are in the lineage of the Joseph who was faithful in the pit, who served with integrity in the place he never asked to be, who kept the character that his destiny required even in the seasons when that destiny was nowhere in sight. That version of Joseph is the version that made the other version possible. And that version of you is making the version that is coming possible right now, in ways you cannot yet fully see. The pain you have carried is not incidental to your story. It is not a detour from your story. It is the story, the part that no one else can write for you, the part that makes what comes next carry a weight of meaning that comfort alone could never produce. And I need you to know that before we go any further. Because what is coming in this message, the shift that is already beginning, the movement that you can sense, even if you cannot yet name it, needs to be received by someone who has fully honored what the season cost them. Not someone who has rushed past the grief into the gratitude. Not someone who has performed healing before the wound was properly acknowledged, but someone who has sat in the honest place and said, yes, this cost me something real, and I am still here, and I am still open, and I am ready. You have just done that, and that matters more than you know. I want to introduce you to two ideas today that I believe will do something specific and necessary in you. Not because they are complicated or require any particular background to understand, but because there are seasons in a human life when the framework you have been using to interpret your experience is simply too small for what is actually happening. And when that is the case, the most transformative thing that can occur is not a change in your circumstances. It is a change in the lens through which you see them. What I am about to give you is a new lens, an ancient one that was built precisely for the kind of season you have been living in. The first idea is what ancient wisdom traditions call the appointed time. There is a phrase that appears in some of the oldest written texts in human history, texts that were composed by people who had themselves been through extended seasons of waiting, of loss, of carrying a promise that had not yet materialized in visible form. The phrase, translated into modern language, says something like this: the vision is for an appointed time. It will speak and it will not lie. Though it tarries, wait for it, because it will surely come and it will not delay beyond its time. I want you to hear what that is actually saying, because it is more precise and more radical than it might first appear. It is not saying that good things happen eventually to people who are patient enough. That is a fortune cookie. What it is actually saying is that there is a specific moment, already existing in a dimension you cannot yet see, into which your promise is moving. Not drifting, not wandering, moving with intention and with direction toward a moment that has already been designated as its arrival point. The appointed time is not a vague future. It is a fixed coordinate, and what is moving toward that coordinate cannot be permanently redirected, cannot be stolen, cannot be reassigned to someone else, and cannot be made to arrive before its moment or after it. Think about what that means for the specific pain of your waiting season. One of the most corrosive aspects of a long wait is the fear that you have somehow missed it, that the window opened and you were not ready, that the moment passed while you were still in the middle of your preparation, and now what was meant for you has gone to someone else. That fear is one of the most persistent and most damaging things a chosen one can carry, because it turns the waiting from something purposeful into something panicked. It replaces the posture of one who is being prepared with the posture of one who is running out of time. But the appointed time says something directly to that fear. It says that what has been designated for you cannot arrive before you are ready and cannot leave before you receive it. The appointed moment holds. It is not subject to your performance anxiety. It is not canceled by your slow seasons. It is not given away because you took long. It exists in a realm where the ordinary rules of scarcity and competition and missed opportunities do not apply. And it is moving toward you with the same certainty that the sun moves toward the horizon every morning, unhurried and unstoppable and exactly on time. I want to tell you what this means practically for the person who has spent years wondering if they have been forgotten. It means that everything you have interpreted as evidence of being passed over has been evidence of something else entirely. The opportunities that did not materialize were not your appointed things arriving and leaving. They were other things, things that were not yours, things that would have taken you somewhere adjacent to your destiny, but not into the center of it. The appointed thing, your specific thing, the one that carries your name in the dimension where names are written before birth, that thing has not passed. It is still in motion. It is still on its way. And the fact that you are here, still oriented, still open, still willing to receive what these words are offering, is itself evidence that you have not missed your moment. People who have missed their moment do not show up like this. They go somewhere else. They close. You are still open, and open is exactly the posture that the appointed time requires when it arrives. There is also this. The appointed time concept carries within it a protection that I want to name explicitly. If what is designated for you can only arrive at its appointed moment, then it follows that what arrives before that moment, or what presents itself as your destiny, but does not carry the signature of the appointed time, can be identified and released. Not everything that looks like your breakthrough is your breakthrough. Not every open door is your door. Not every opportunity that presents itself in the language of your dream is actually aligned with the appointed thing that has your name on it. And one of the gifts of a long preparation season is the development of a discernment so refined that when the appointed thing finally arrives, you will know it with a certainty that bypasses doubt. You will know it the way you know your own name, because you have spent so long in the wilderness, learning to distinguish between what is yours and what is simply loud. The second idea is what ancient wisdom calls the door season. Every chosen one, in every tradition and every era, has a door season. It is the period that follows the wilderness, the period that follows the preparation, in which the landscape of possibility begins to shift in visible and tangible ways. Doors that were closed begin to open. Not all of them, not randomly, but specifically. The doors that belong to the appointed time begin to present themselves, and they present themselves in a way that is recognizable to the person who has been prepared to walk through them. Here is what I want you to understand about the door season that makes it different from simply a good period or a lucky stretch. The doors that open in this season do not open because you finally figured out the right formula, or said the right words, or connected with the right people. Though all of those things may be part of the mechanics of it, they open because something in the spiritual architecture of your life has reached a point of completion. The foundation that was being laid in the wilderness is now solid enough to support what is being built on top of it. And the doors that open in this season open onto rooms that match the foundation. They are not random windfalls. They are precise alignments between who you have become and what was always intended for your life. But I want to say something about the door season that is rarely said, and I think it is the most important thing. Not every door that opens in this season is your door. I said this a moment ago in a different context, and I want to return to it here because it carries enormous practical significance. When you have been in a long drought and the rain finally comes, the instinct is to run toward every drop, to say yes to everything that appears to be an opening, to treat all movement as progress simply because it is movement after a long stillness. But the door season does not ask you to run toward every door. It asks you to recognize your door, the one that carries a particular quality that the wilderness prepared you to sense. The one that does not just appear to be an opportunity, but that carries with it a peace that is distinct from excitement, a settledness that is distinct from certainty, a feeling not of grasping, but of arriving. The distinguishing mark of your appointed door is not that it feels easy. It may require everything you have. It may ask more of you than anything you have previously attempted. But it will not ask you to become someone other than who you have been becoming. It will not require you to set aside the character and the depth and the hard-won wisdom of your wilderness season in order to walk through it. In fact, it will require precisely those things. It will fit the person you have become the way a key fits the lock it was made for. And when you stand in front of it, you will feel something that has been absent for a long time. Not just hope, you have had hope. Not just desire, you have had desire. But recognition, the specific interior experience of encountering something that belongs to you. I want to give you something practical to carry as you move through this part of your season, now that you understand the appointed time and the door for season. I want to give you 3 things to watch for, 3 signs that your door season is beginning or has already begun. The first sign is a shift in the quality of your energy. Not a dramatic increase in motivation or enthusiasm, though that may come, but a subtle change in the texture of your daily experience. A sense that the resistance that has characterized your recent seasons is beginning to thin. That actions which previously required enormous effort are beginning to require slightly less. That you are finding it easier to access the version of yourself that you know you are at your best, even in ordinary moments. This shift is not dramatic. Do not wait for a dramatic shift. Watch for the subtle one, because the subtle one is the real one. The second sign is the arrival of specific people, not a crowd, not a sudden expansion of your social world, but 1 or 2 individuals who appear in your life carrying something that you recognize as relevant to your next season. They may not announce themselves as significant. They may arrive in the most ordinary of circumstances. But something in you will notice. Something in you will say, this person belongs to what is coming, not to what has been. Pay attention to those people. They are not accidents. In the door season, The right connections arrive before the door is fully visible. Because part of what those connections do is help you see the door clearly. The third sign is the return of a specific dream or vision that you had set aside. Something you believed for early in your journey, that the years caused you to hold more loosely, to protect yourself from the pain of hoping for something that seemed increasingly unlikely. In the door season, that original vision often resurfaces, not as a cruel reminder of what has not come, but as a confirmation that what you saw at the beginning was accurate, and that what is now beginning to move is connected to that original seeing. The vision was not wrong. The timing was simply chronos, not yet kairos. But now the appointed time is here, and the vision that was always true is beginning to find its moment of expression. What God has appointed, no delay can cancel. What God has designated, no detour can permanently redirect. What God has prepared for the person who has been prepared by the wilderness, no force in the natural or spiritual realm can withhold beyond its appointed time. Your door is not behind you. It is not somewhere you passed in the middle of your hardest year and failed to notice. It is ahead of you. It is present. It is becoming visible. And the person standing in front of it, the one who has been assembled with every strand of every difficult year, is precisely, exactly, completely the right person to walk through it. What God has appointed, no delay can cancel, and the door that carries your name is already open. You simply have to look up. There is a moment in every chosen one's journey when the internal world begins to shift before the external world catches up. And that gap, the gap between what is moving inside you and what has not yet appeared in front of you, can be one of the most disorienting places to stand. Because you can feel something changing. You can sense a movement in the atmosphere of your life that did not exist 6 months ago, 3 months ago, even 30 days ago. But you cannot point to it yet. You cannot show it to anyone. You cannot prove it with evidence that the people around you would find convincing. And so you stand in this in-between place, knowing something is shifting, but not yet able to name what it is or where it is going. I want to name it for you today, not in vague and general terms, in specific ones. Because chosen ones do not need more inspiration that evaporates by the end of the week. They need language for what they are already sensing. They need someone to look at what is happening in the interior of their life and call it by its real name so that they can stop second-guessing it and start moving with it. 3 things are shifting in your life right now. 3 specific areas where the appointed time is beginning to make itself known. And I want to walk through each one with enough detail that you will recognize it not as a hopeful prediction, but as a description of something that is already in motion. The first is your inner world, the landscape of what happens inside you when you are alone and quiet. Here is what is about to change there, and some of you will recognize that it has already begun. The noise is going to get quieter, not all at once, and not without resistance from the patterns that have made their home in the anxious places of your mind over these long years. But there is a settling that is coming to the interior of your life that is different from the numbness of exhaustion or the resignation of someone who has simply stopped caring. This is a different kind of quiet. It is the quiet of a river after a storm, when the water that was turbulent and dark and impossible to see through begins to slow and clear, and you can suddenly see the riverbed again. You are going to begin to see clearly again. You are going to begin to hear your own voice again. The deep one, the one that knows things before you can explain how it knows them. The one that has been trying to reach you through all the interference of the difficult years. What you should not do in this season of inner shifting is fill the quiet the moment it arrives. This is the instinct of someone who has lived in noise for so long that silence feels dangerous. The moment the anxiety loosens its grip slightly, the temptation is to immediately fill that space with activity, with distraction, with the management of 1,000 small things that keep you from having to sit with what the quiet is trying to show you. Do not do that. When the quiet comes, let it come. Sit in it. It is not emptiness. It is arrival. It is the frequency of your appointed time beginning to be audible in the interior of your life. What you can trust in this area is this. The clarity that is coming to your inner world is not going to ask you to become someone different from who you are. It is going to reveal more fully who you have always been underneath the weight of the season. The things you will see clearly when the inner noise settles are not going to be foreign or frightening. They are going to feel like remembering, like returning to a self that was always there, but that the wilderness made temporarily inaccessible. Trust that process. Trust the remembering. It is taking you somewhere real. If this is landing in the place where you know it is meant to land, I want you to type the words "I am ready" in the comments right now. Not as a performance, as a declaration. Because declaring readiness is one of the ways that chosen ones signal to the appointed time that the door is open. The second area that is shifting is your relational world. The people in your life, and specifically the configuration of who is close and who is distant. Here is what is about to happen, and I want to prepare you for it because it can feel destabilizing if you do not understand what it means. Some relationships that have been a significant part of your life are going to complete themselves naturally in this season. Not through conflict, not through dramatic endings, but through a gentle and mutual recognition that the season you shared has come to its natural conclusion. People who were meant to walk with you through the wilderness are not always meant to walk with you into what comes after the wilderness. The relationship served its purpose. It carried you through something you needed to be carried through. And now, as the landscape changes, the fit is simply no longer what it was. You will feel it. They may feel it too. And the temptation will be to force the continuation of something that has naturally concluded, because ending feels like losing, and you have already lost enough in this season. But releasing what has completed is not losing. It is making room. It is creating the relational space into which the people who belong to your next season can arrive, and they will arrive. In the door season, the right people do not trickle in. They appear with a specificity that is unmistakable. Someone who understands the language of your calling without needing it explained. Someone who sees the version of you that is emerging, not just the version that survived the wilderness. Someone whose presence does not drain you, but restores something in you that you had forgotten was there. What you should not do in the relational shifting of this season is grieve the departing relationship so heavily that you miss the arriving ones. Honor what was. Release it with gratitude. And then turn your face toward what is coming. Because what is coming in the area of relationships in this season is going to give you something you have been longing for through all the years of isolation. It is going to give you the experience of being truly known, not just appreciated, not just needed. Known, seen in the full depth of who you are, including the parts that the wilderness grew in you, and valued precisely because of that depth. What you can trust in this area is that the people who belong to your next season already exist. They are not hypothetical. They are real people living real lives who are being moved in the direction of yours by the same force that is moving your life in the direction of theirs. The appointed time governs not just your individual destiny, but the convergence of destined people. You are not going to have to manufacture these connections. You are not going to have to perform or present or shrink yourself to make them work. They are going to fit. And the fitting is going to feel like relief in a way that you did not know you were still capable of feeling. The third area that is shifting is perhaps the one you have been most afraid to hope about, because it is the most practical, the most visible, the most measurable by the standards of the world you live in every day. It is the area of resources, opportunities, and what I want to call the open hand of provision. There is a posture that a long season of scarcity produces in a person, a tightening, a bracing, a way of moving through the world with your hands slightly closed, because experience has taught you that what comes can also be taken, and that hope extended too far in the direction of material provision has a way of coming back to you as disappointment rather than fulfillment. And so you have learned to want carefully, to need quietly, to ask for little and expect less, not because you stopped believing that abundance was possible, but because the distance between your belief and your experience had become so wide that it felt irresponsible to keep standing with your arms open. I want to speak to that closed posture today. I want to speak to the part of you that stopped asking for the big things, that learned to call it wisdom when it was sometimes closer to self-protection, that began qualifying every hope with a disclaimer, just in case. Here is what is shifting in this area. The flow of provision in your life is changing direction, not dramatically, not all at once, but in a way that is going to become increasingly evident over the coming weeks and months. Opportunities that previously seemed to go to people who were less prepared, less capable, and less aligned with what the opportunity actually required are going to begin finding their way to you. Not because the world has suddenly become fair, but because you are now positioned in a way that makes you visible to what was always looking for someone like you. The phrase I want you to hold on to in this area is that you are not going to have to fight for what belongs to you in this season. That does not mean it will require no effort. It means the effort will feel different. It will feel like stepping into a current rather than swimming against one. It will feel like movement that is assisted rather than movement that is entirely self-generated. There is a difference between striving and receiving, and chosen ones in the door season begin to experience more of the latter, not because they stop working, but because their work begins to be met by something. An opening, a response, a yes where there has been silence for a long time. What you should not do in this area is spend the provision of your door season on the fears of your wilderness season. There will be a temptation when resources begin to shift to immediately direct everything that arrives toward plugging the holes that the long season created. And some of that is wisdom. Some of that is responsible stewardship. But do not let the scarcity mindset of the wilderness govern the abundance decisions of the door season. Begin, even in small ways, to practice the posture of someone who believes that what comes is not the last of what is coming, that this provision is not a windfall to hoard, but a signal of a new pattern, that the hand that is opening is not going to close again. What you can trust in this area is that what belongs to you cannot be permanently withheld. What has your name on it in the appointed dimension cannot be redirected to someone else indefinitely. What was designated for your life before you were born does not expire. It waits. And in the door season, what has been waiting begins to move towards you with an efficiency and a specificity that will make you understand, finally and completely, why the timing had to be what it was, why earlier would not have worked, why the appointed time was not a punishment but a precision. 3 things are shifting: your inner world, your relational world, your world of provision and opportunity. And they are not shifting independently of each other. They are shifting together as part of a single coordinated movement in your life that is connected to the appointed time we talked about earlier. The inner clarity creates the relational openness. The relational openness creates the context for the right opportunities to be recognized and received. And the received opportunities fund the next layer of what you were always designed to build. This is not a sequence you have to manage. It is a sequence you have to receive. And receiving, for a chosen one who has spent years in a posture of striving, requires a specific and deliberate practice of opening your expectations, opening your interpretations of what is happening around you, opening your willingness to recognize good things when they arrive, rather than waiting for them to prove themselves before you allow yourself to acknowledge them. The movement has already begun. The three areas are already in early stages of shift, and the person you have become through everything you have carried through the wilderness is exactly the person who is positioned to receive what this shift is bringing. Type the words "I am ready" in the comments if you feel this landing in the place where it is meant to land. And then keep listening, because what comes next is going to speak directly to the identity that this season is building in you. And I think it is something you have been waiting a long time to hear someone say out loud. The three areas we just walked through together: the inner world, the relational world, the world of provision and opportunity. They are not just circumstances that are shifting around you. They are the external evidence of something that has already shifted inside you. Something that happened in the wilderness that you may not have fully named yet. And before we talk about what comes next in practical terms, I want to do something that I believe is one of the most important things this message can offer you. I want to give you a name, not your given name. Something more specific than that. A name for who you have become through everything you have been through. Because chosen ones who do not know what they have become through their wilderness season often walk into their door season still carrying the identity of someone who is surviving, rather than the identity of someone who has been transformed. And those two identities produce very different lives. So let me tell you who you are now. You are what I call a cycle breaker. Not in the generic sense that phrase is sometimes used, as though it simply means someone who decided to do things differently from their family or their community. I mean something more precise and more weighty than that. A cycle breaker in the fullest sense of the term is someone who, through the specific suffering and the specific faithfulness of a specific wilderness season, has developed the capacity to interrupt patterns that have operated in their lineage, their community, and their sphere of influence for generations. Patterns of poverty, not just financial poverty, but poverty of vision, poverty of expectation, poverty of what people believe is available to them. Patterns of silence, the kind of silence that settles over families and communities where certain truths are never spoken and certain possibilities are never imagined, because no one in living memory has lived them. Patterns of shrinking, of making yourself small enough to fit inside circumstances that were never meant to be your permanent home. You did not come through the wilderness simply to have a better personal life, though that is coming, and it is legitimate, and it is good, and you should receive it without apology. You came through the wilderness to become someone whose life, whose actual lived experience of breaking through, creates permission and possibility for everyone who comes behind you. That is what a cycle breaker does. They do not just escape a pattern. They hold the door open so that others can follow them through it. And the authority to hold that door open comes from one place and one place only. From having been through what they have been through and arrived on the other side with their character intact, their compassion deepened, and their faith, though tested beyond what seemed survivable, still standing. That is you. You are a cycle breaker. And every hard year, every near miss, every night of sleepless wrestling with doubt and disappointment was not just your personal suffering. It was the price of the authority you now carry, the price of the door you now have the right to hold open. I want to take you somewhere now. I want to give you a guided experience that I have found does something in chosen ones that words alone cannot fully accomplish. I want you to follow me through this, even if it feels unfamiliar, because what happens on the other side of this exercise is worth the brief discomfort of trying something new. I want you to picture yourself standing at a threshold, not a specific door you have seen in real life, but an interior one, a threshold that exists in the space between who you have been and who you are becoming. It is wide enough to walk through comfortably, and on the side where you are currently standing, the light is the particular quality of light that comes at the end of a long season. Not dark, but not yet full brightness either. The kind of light that exists in the hour just before the sun fully clears the horizon, enough to see by, enough to know that the full light is coming. Now I want you to turn around, not to go back, but to see where you have come from. And as you turn, I want you to look at the terrain behind you, the distance you have crossed to arrive at this threshold. Look at the years, not as a list of what went wrong, but as a landscape. See the places where the ground was rough and the path was not clear. See the places where you stopped and almost turned back and chose instead to keep moving. See the places where someone or something said you would not make it, and you made it anyway. See the seasons of drought when you were running on reserves you did not know you had. See all of it, the full span of it, the extraordinary distance of it. And now I want you to notice something about yourself as you look at that terrain. You are not the same person who entered it. The person who stepped into that landscape was capable and hopeful and willing. But the person standing at this threshold, looking back at where they came from, is something more than that. There is a settledness in you now that was not there at the beginning, a groundedness, a quality of presence that does not come from certainty about the future, but from a hard won. Familiarity with your own capacity to endure, to adapt, to remain oriented toward what matters even when everything around you is disorienting. The wilderness did not break you, it built you. And the thing that was built is standing right now at a threshold, looking back at the proof of its own construction. Now turn back toward the threshold, look forward, and notice that on the other side of it, the light is different, fuller, warmer. The kind of light that does not ask you to strain your eyes to see by it. And in that light, you can make out the shapes of things that belong to your next season. Not in perfect detail, not yet, because some of what is ahead of you is still in the process of being arranged. But you can see enough. You can see that what is ahead is not a continuation of what you have been through. It is a genuinely different landscape. One that was designed for the person you have become. One that fits the cycle breaker standing at the threshold in a way that earlier landscapes never quite fit you, because you were not yet fully yourself in them. Now I want you to notice one more thing before I bring you back from this picture. You are not standing at this threshold for the first time. You have been approaching it for years. Every choice you made in the wilderness, every moment of faithfulness when faithlessness would have been understandable, every act of compassion extended from a depleted place, every time you chose to stay open when closing would have been safer, all of it was movement in the direction of this exact threshold. You did not wander to this place. You were brought here by every step, by every year, by every strand that has been twisted into the rope of who you now are. You are already standing at the threshold. You are already inside the moment that you have been moving toward. The question is not whether you will arrive. The arrival has already happened. The question is simply whether you are ready to look up and walk through. I believe you are. I believe the fact that you have stayed with this message through the honest parts and the hard parts and the parts that asked you to feel things you have been carefully managing for a very long time is itself evidence that you are ready. People who are not ready do not stay. They leave when it gets real. You stayed. And staying is the most fundamental expression of readiness that exists. So let me speak a blessing over you now. Not a grand proclamation. Something quieter and more personal than that. May the clarity that is coming to your inner world arrive gently enough that you can receive it, without being overwhelmed by it. May the relationships that are completing themselves in this season release cleanly, without the kind of bitterness that poisons what comes after them. May the people who belong to your next season find their way to you with a speed that surprises you and a specificity that removes all doubt about whether they are meant to be there. May the provision that is shifting in your direction arrive in forms that you recognize as yours, not as a windfall belonging to someone else that briefly passed through your hands, but as something that has your name on it and settles into your life the way a key settles into the lock it was made for. May you have the courage to stop explaining yourself to people who were never going to understand the particular language of your calling. May you have the wisdom to receive good things without immediately bracing for them to be taken. May you have the grace to hold open the door you are walking through so that others can follow. Because that is what cycle breakers do, and that is who you are. May the years that were hard find their meaning not in the suffering itself, but in what the suffering produced in you, which is something that cannot be manufactured, cannot be bought, and cannot be taken from you now. It belongs to you the way your breath belongs to you, completely, permanently, without condition. And may you wake up tomorrow with the specific and grounded sense that something has shifted, not because your circumstances have dramatically changed overnight, though change is coming, but because you have changed. Because you stood at a threshold today and looked back at where you came from and looked forward at where you are going and chose, in the space between those two visions, to receive what this season has been building toward. That choice is the hinge. That choice is the moment. And you have already made it by being here. You are a cycle breaker. You are standing at the threshold, and the light on the other side is already on. Walk toward it. It has been waiting for you longer than you know, and it is not going anywhere without you. I want to stay close to you for a moment before we move into the practical, because what just happened in the previous section was not small. You were asked to see yourself in a way that chosen ones in long wilderness seasons rarely allow themselves to be seen. You were asked to turn around and look at the terrain you crossed. You were asked to stand at the threshold and look forward without flinching. And if you did that even partially, even with resistance, something in you shifted that will not shift back. And now I want to take that shift and give it somewhere to go. Because the cycle breaker standing at the threshold needs more than a vision. They need a next step, a real one, concrete, specific, something they can do today, not someday. This is the part of the message where I want to talk about action. Not the frantic kind of action that comes from fear of missing out or anxiety about falling behind. The grounded kind. The kind that flows from a person who knows who they are and where they are standing and what season they are in. The kind that a cycle breaker takes when they have finally stopped waiting for permission and started moving with the current that the appointed time has set in motion. I want to walk you through 3 areas where specific, practical movement is available to you right now, not in 6 months. Not when your circumstances improve. Right now, in the exact life you are living today, with the exact resources and relationships and opportunities that are currently available to you. The first area is your relationships, and the action available to you here is one of the most powerful and most consistently avoided things a chosen one can do. It is the act of deliberate release. There are people in your life right now who belong to your past season. You already know who they are. You have known for longer than you have been willing to admit. These are not bad people. They are not people who meant you harm. They are people whose season with you has completed, and yet you have been maintaining the connection out of loyalty, out of habit, out of the fear that releasing them means admitting that something real is ending. But here is what I want you to understand about deliberate release. It is not abandonment. It is not ingratitude. It is not a judgment on the value of what you shared. It is simply the honest acknowledgement that seasons complete, and that completing is not the same as failing. The practical action here is this. Identify one relationship that you know has been in completion for longer than you have acknowledged. Not to end it with drama or with a conversation that tears things apart, but to stop investing energy in its maintenance that you no longer have in honest supply. To release your grip on it gently and with genuine gratitude for what it was. And then to notice what happens in the space that is created. Because the door season does not fill relational space with noise. It fills it with precision. The right person cannot find their way to you if every available space is occupied by a connection that completed 3 years ago. There is a second action available in this relational area, and it is in some ways the mirror image of the first. It is the act of deliberate approach. There is someone in your current or recent environment who carries something that is relevant to your next season. You have noticed them. You have perhaps been cautious about pursuing the connection because the wilderness trained you to be careful about expecting too much from new relationships. But this person is not a risk to be managed. They are a connection to be made. The practical action is to reach toward them, not with an agenda, not with a presentation of your best self, but with genuine curiosity about who they are and what they carry. One conversation, one honest exchange. That is the action available to you in this area right now. The second area where practical movement is available to you is your sense of purpose. And the action here is smaller than you might expect, which is precisely why it is so important. One of the most paralyzing experiences of a long wilderness season is the sense that your purpose is so large and so far from your current reality that any step you could take today would be so small as to be meaningless. And so you do not take it. You wait for a step that feels proportionate to the scale of what you believe you are called to. But that proportionate step never arrives because purpose does not work that way. Purpose does not wait until you can take a large step and then present itself. Purpose reveals itself through the small step, through the willingness to move in the direction of what you know with whatever is available in the present moment. The practical action here is this. Identify one thing, just one, that is directly connected to what you know you're calling to be. Not a complete plan, not a fully formed strategy. One thing. It might be a phone call you have been putting off, a conversation you have been afraid to initiate, a piece of writing that has been waiting for you to sit down and begin it, a skill you have been meaning to develop that keeps getting pushed to the back of your list because it does not feel urgent and nothing in your current circumstances is making space for it. One thing, connected to your calling, available to you today. And here is what I want you to understand about that one small action. In the door season, small actions in the direction of your calling carry a weight and a momentum that they do not carry in other seasons. They carry it because they are happening in the appointed time. Because the spiritual architecture of your life is now aligned in a way that it was not aligned in the earlier seasons. When you tried similar things and felt like you were pushing against a wall, the wall is not there anymore. Or rather, it is significantly thinner than it was, and the action that felt like pushing against stone in previous seasons will feel, in this one, and more like stepping through a door that was waiting for you to try the handle. Do not wait for the action to feel significant before you take it. Take it, and then watch it become significant. That is the sequence of the door season. Action precedes evidence. Movement precedes visibility. The step is taken in faith, and then the staircase appears, and you look back and understand that it could not have appeared any other way. The third area where practical movement is available to you right now is perhaps the most surprising one. It is the area of your interior life. Your daily practice of stillness and alignment and access to the frequency that was always yours, but that the noise of the wilderness made temporarily inaccessible. We talked earlier in this message about the protocol of return, about the 7 minutes of intentional stillness that creates the conditions for the kind of clarity and insight that a cycle breaker in the door season needs in order to navigate well. And I want to return to that now because it connects to something I need to say specifically about this practical section. The action available to you in the area of your interior life is not complex, but it requires a decision that chosen ones in long seasons often find surprisingly difficult. The decision to consistently prioritize the 7 minutes, not when everything is settled, not when life quiets down enough to make it easy, but as a non-negotiable practice that happens before the day takes over, before the noise reasserts itself, before the demands and the distractions of ordinary life crowd out frequency that your next season requires you to be operating on. This is where the Genius Wave, the audio program that Dr. James Rivers developed over more than 30 years of neuroscience research, becomes practically significant for someone in your exact position. Because the challenge of the door season is not that chosen ones lack the desire for clarity and alignment. It is that the habits of the wilderness, the hypervigilance, the chronic background anxiety, the neural patterns that were built for survival rather than for flourishing, do not automatically dissolve just because the season has changed. The brain that was trained by years of stress does not simply relax into theta and gamma states because the external circumstances have shifted. It needs a specific, calibrated signal, a frequency precise enough to guide it out of its habitual patterns and into the states where the appointed time can be heard, felt, and responded to with the clarity it deserves. 7 minutes a day. A specific audio frequency engineered to guide your brain into the states of theta and gamma, where creativity lives, where intuition speaks clearly, where the insights that move you forward arise not from straining but from receiving. This is not an addition to your spiritual practice. It is not a replacement for it. It is the tool that makes your interior life more accessible, more consistent, and more practically effective in the everyday moments when the door season is, asking you to be sharp and clear and capable of recognizing what belongs to you. The practical action in this area is to begin, not to think about beginning, not to plan your beginning, but to actually begin. The link in the pinned comment below this video takes you directly to the verified source of the Genius Wave at the reduced price of $39. Backed by a 90-day money-back guarantee, that means the only real risk is continuing without it. If you have been feeling in the course of this message that this tool is part of what belongs to your next season, that feeling is information. Chosen ones who have developed the discernment of a long wilderness season do not need to second-guess that kind of recognition. They need to act on it. 3 areas, 3 practical actions available to you today. Release the relationship that has completed. Take the one small step in the direction of your calling. Begin the interior practice that gives the frequency of your appointed time somewhere to land in your daily life. None of these actions will feel like enough. That is the point. The door season does not ask for everything at once. It asks for the next right thing. And the next right thing, taken faithfully and consistently, becomes the architecture of the life that the appointed time has been building toward. You have the vision now. You have the identity. You have the 3 areas of practical movement. What remains is the decision that only you can make. The decision to step through the threshold that you have already arrived at. The decision to move with the current rather than waiting for proof that the current is real. The decision to be fully and without apology the cycle breaker that the wilderness made you and that the door season is waiting to release into the world. That decision is yours. And I believe, with everything in me, that you have already made it. You made it the moment you stayed. You made it every time you chose to keep listening when the message got real. You made it in all the ways that matter most. The quiet, invisible, costly ways that chosen ones make their most important decisions. In the interior, in the honest place, where no one is watching but everything is counted. The step is yours, and it is right in front of you. Take it. Fun 10. I want to begin this final section by doing something that I do not do lightly, and that I do not want you to receive lightly either. I want to thank you, not in the performative way that content often ends, with a quick acknowledgement before the call to action, but in the specific earned, genuine way that one person thanks another person who showed up when showing up cost them something. Because showing up today cost you something. I know that because I know the kind of person who finds their way to a message like this one. You did not arrive here from a place of ease and surplus. You arrived here from a place of carrying, from a place of managing something heavy and doing it largely without an audience, from a place of still being willing, after everything your season has asked of you, to sit down and give your full attention to the possibility that something in your life is about to change. That willingness is not small. In a person who has been disappointed as many times as you have been disappointed, that willingness is actually extraordinary. And I want to name it as extraordinary before we go any further. You showed up today with enough, not with certainty, not with fully restored faith, not with the wounds healed and the questions answered and the doubts permanently silenced. You showed up with enough openness to stay, enough honesty to recognize yourself in the hard parts, enough courage to sit with the grief before rushing to the gratitude, enough trust, even if it was the smallest possible sliver of trust, to receive what this message was offering. And enough is always enough for the appointed time to work with. Heaven has never required more than enough. It has always taken the small offering and done with it what the giver could not imagine. I want to tell you something that I need you to carry beyond this message. Right now, in this exact moment, in different time zones and different languages, and different versions of the specific pain you have been living in, other chosen ones are hearing these same words. They are sitting in cars, parked outside houses they are afraid to go back into. They are lying on floors of apartments that feel too quiet. They are hunched over phones in the middle of working nights that were never supposed to be their permanent reality. They are in the specific geography of a waiting season that looks different from yours in its details and identical to yours in its texture. And they are hearing what you are hearing. And something is shifting in them, the way something has been shifting in you throughout this message. You are not alone in this room. All across the world, other chosen ones are walking into this exact same message. And the community of people who have been through what you have been through, who carry what you carry, who are standing at the threshold of what you are standing at the threshold of, is larger and more real and more present than the isolation of your wilderness season has allowed you to feel. That community exists. It is being gathered, and you are part of it, not as a peripheral member, as someone who belongs at the center of it, because you have paid the price of belonging in full. I want to give you one final exercise before this message closes, and I am going to ask you to do it with me right now, not later, not as something to try when you have more time or more energy or more faith. Now, in this moment, with exactly what you have, I want you to picture yourself standing at the threshold one more time. You have been there before in this message, so the image is familiar. The terrain behind you, the fuller light ahead of you, the specific quality of standing in between what was and what is coming. You are there now. You can feel it. And in this version of the threshold, I want you to notice something that was not part of the earlier image. You are carrying something, not a bag or a physical object, but a weight. A collection of things that you have been carrying for so long that you have stopped noticing the specific shape of each piece. The grief that has no clean object. The self-doubt that accumulated through the years of near misses. The anger that you never fully expressed because there was no appropriate target for it, and because expressing it felt like a betrayal of the faith you were trying to hold on to. The exhaustion that goes deeper than sleep can reach. The resigned parts. The parts that stopped asking for certain things because asking had become too painful. The armor that you built piece by piece to protect yourself from the specific kinds of hurt that your season specialized in delivering. I want you to feel the full weight of all of that for just a moment. Not to punish yourself with it, but to acknowledge how much you have been carrying. To give it the honest recognition it deserves before you set it down. And now I want you to set it down, right there at the threshold. Not throw it away, because what you experienced was real and does not need to be erased, but set it down. Place it deliberately at the edge of the threshold, on the side where you have been standing. Leave it there. It does not need to cross with you. The person you are becoming on the other side of the threshold does not need to carry the full weight of what the person in the wilderness needed to survive. Some of what you carried was protection that is no longer required. Some of it was armor that served you in a season where armor was necessary and that you can lay down now because the season has changed. Some of it was the accumulated weight of years of hope deferred. And you can leave it here because what is on the other side of the threshold is not another season of deferral. It is arrival. Set it down. Feel the difference in your body when you imagine doing that. Feel what it would be like to walk forward, carrying only what belongs to your next season and none of what belongs to your last one. That feeling is available to you, not as a fantasy, as a genuine chosen, practiced reality that begins today, and that deepens with every morning you choose to begin from that lighter place rather than from the familiar weight of everything you have been carrying. The threshold is not in your imagination. It is in your actual life. And the act of setting down what you no longer need to carry is not a metaphor. It is a decision, a real one. One that you make not once and perfectly, but again and again, in small daily choices until the lightness becomes your new default rather than the exception. Now I want to speak to you about this community that you are part of. Because chosen ones who carry what you carry have a responsibility that extends beyond their own breakthrough. And I want to name it directly rather than leaving it implied. If this message has reached you today and something in it has shifted something in you, then you are now in possession of something that another chosen one needs. Another person, in the specific isolation of their specific wilderness season, needs to know that they are not behind and not forgotten and not the only one who feels what they feel. They need to hear that the waiting has a name and the pain has a purpose, and the door that has been closed is not locked against them but held for them. They need someone to send them this message, not because the algorithm needs the engagement, though the engagement does help the message reach further, but because the chosen one who is going to wake up tomorrow without any of this language, without any of this framework, without any of this confirmation that they are not alone, that person is real and they are waiting, and you know where they are because you were them not very long ago. So please share this message, not for me, so that this message can reach another chosen one who is walking into their week without anyone to name it for them. Like this video so that the platform carries it further. Subscribe so that what comes next in this conversation can find its way back to you. And if this community has given you something that you want to invest in, that you want to see continue and grow and reach more people in more wilderness seasons, the option to support that work is available, and it is genuinely appreciated, and it goes directly toward making more of these messages possible. And I want to mention one more thing before I close. If the genius wave found you somewhere in the middle of this message, if the conversation about frequency and brainwave entrainment and the 7-minute practice landed somewhere specific and real in you, if you found yourself thinking, yes, that is what I need, that is the missing piece of the interior practice I have been trying to build, then I want you to know that it is waiting for you in the pinned comment below. The link is there. The price is $39, reduced from $49, with a 90-day money-back guarantee that makes the decision genuinely low risk. And the only thing I will say about it in this final section is this. If you know it is a yes, trust that knowing. You have spent enough of your wilderness season second-guessing the things you knew. This one, trust. And now I want to close this message the way it deserves to be closed. Not with a summary, not with a list of what we covered, but with a final word spoken directly to the part of you that has been listening most carefully throughout all of this. The quiet part. The part that showed up today not entirely sure what it was looking for, but willing to look anyway. You have been faithful in ways that no one fully witnessed. You have chosen, again and again, in the small, invisible moments that make up the actual substance of a life, to remain oriented toward what is good and what is true and what is possible, even when the evidence for any of it was thin. You have carried things that were not yours to carry, and you carried them anyway because someone had to, and you were the one who was there. You have been the stable person, the strong person, the person who holds it together in season after season where you yourself needed holding, and there was no one available to do it. I see that. This message sees that. And more importantly, the appointed time sees that. Every unseen act of faithfulness has been recorded in the dimension where such things are kept. None of it was wasted. None of it was invisible to what matters most. And all of it, every strand of it, has been twisted into the rope that is now strong enough to hold the weight of what is coming. You are a cycle breaker. You are standing at the threshold. The light on the other side is real, and it is warm, and it has your name in it. And the step forward, the one that crosses from the wilderness into the door season, is the smallest step you will ever take, and the most significant one. It is simply the next step, the one that is right in front of you, the one you have already been moving toward through everything you have survived. Take it. You are ready. You have always been ready, and the season that has been waiting for you is ready too.